In this tutorial we're going to look at creating our first Neo4j database. First of all, we need to ensure our Neo4j instance is started. So we just go over to here on the Neo4j dialog and hit the start button. And as you can see, the database location is still the default. It's the default GraphDB. And then we just fire up our favorite browser and we go to localhost port 7474. We've now connected to our Neo4j database. So how do we create our first node? Well, it's interesting because we can browse at any time what's actually in our database using the Cypher Query Language. And we can actually use that language as well to create nodes and relationships, which are in fact the essence of a graph database. Let's have a go at creating our first node. There's no surprise really, but the key word for creating a node is actually create. And then we use open bracket, close bracket, and the actual open bracket and close bracket symbolizes a node, which is actually a round object. And that's it. And then we just go along here to this to execute. We've got Cypher create, created one node, returned 0 rows, and it took 21 milliseconds. So that's created as our first node. Well, we can use another command, and that command's called match. We'll go into this a bit more detail later, but for now I just want to show you the node we've just created. And we want to match using n and return n. So what that's telling Neo4j is that we want to match all nodes and give them a name of n, and then return everything you found in n. So n is like a variable here. And there we have it. Our database is completely empty except for the node we've just created, which has an ID of 0 because it's the first node in our database. Okay, so that successfully created our first node, which is empty. In fact, it hasn't got any values associated with it whatsoever. Now we can assign what is known as a label to a node, and that really, if you think back to relational databases where you have tables, in fact you could have a user table that contains all the data or all the rows to do with users. In the graph database we can use that entity name, if you like, and assign it to a node. So when we first create our node, we can use create again, and by separating it with a colon we can use a label. Now I'm going to give this the label of user. So what this command will do is it will create a new node with the label user and assign it to this variable n. And then we can also use the return and return n. So what's happened here is we've created a new node of type user, or with the label user. We still don't have any data, but as you can see up here, we have no properties, but we do have a label. And the advantage of having a label is that when we do queries now, we can actually return all nodes of a particular type. Similar in the relational database where you return all rows of a particular entity, for example all the users, you can do a similar thing in Neo4j now. So what we can do is use the match command. In a similar way to last time, we can assign it a variable and a colon, and this time we're going to use the label user, and then we're going to return n. So we're going to match everything on a user. Now we're going to go into what match is and how that works in a little bit more detail soon. But just for now, let's run this. And there we have it. If we click on this node now, which is a nice bright sort of orange colour, that returns our node. Okay, so we've seen the create command now. We've created a basic node with no label, and we've also created a new one with a label associated with it. Now in the next tutorial we're going to start looking a bit more detail with this match command and what that actually means and how we can use it.